Many people around the world knew Charles Lindbergh. When Lindbergh's baby son was taken and killed, the news quickly called it the worst crime of the century. In Hopewell, New Jersey, March 1st, 1932 was not a normal night. In America, that night made hearts skip a beat. Imagine a big, lonely house in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and peace. Charles Lindbergh Jr., a 20-month-old boy with a round face, was sleeping in his bed on the second floor. His parents were not like most parents. The father, Charles Lindbergh, was a real star. He was the tall pilot who flew alone across the Atlantic Ocean in 1927, which put him on magazine covers and in history books. Anne Lindbergh, his beautiful wife, was a writer and the daughter of a wealthy family. Everyone thought they were the golden family and couldn't be hurt. Around 9 p.m., that fantasy broke apart all the way. The stone wall was hit by a weak DIY ladder made of 3 pieces of rough-cut wood. Someone got on top of the nursery, opened the window, and grabbed the baby from his bed. Charles was in his study downstairs, and Anne was close. Betty Gow, the nursemaid, had just checked on the boy 30 minutes before. No one heard anything, not a sound, not a cry, not even footsteps. Instead, they found a shaky, broken English ransom note on the windowsill that said, "Dear sir, have $50,000, 0 cents ready. We tell you not to make any ding public." The price was very high, about $1 million today, and it was very dirty and scary. Fear spread quickly. Charles got his gun and searched the area, but the trail was already cold when he got there. The muddy tracks didn't lead anywhere. The broken ladder was lying in the grass. It was heavy, and one of the rungs broke. Nearby, a knife, which might be a tool for the window, fell. The police in the area rushed in and were stunned by the scene. It wasn't a small break-in. It was a blow to a national symbol. As quickly as the news got out, the FBI was on the case by morning. J. Edgar Hoover promised to find and punish anyone who did this. Titles on newspapers screamed, "Lindbergh baby kidnapped." Radios were full of news. The United States was hooked, terrified, and obsessed. No one could sit still for the Lindberghs. Charles was in charge and called the moves like the pilot he was. Anne, on the other hand, held it together just about. More was hints in the ransom note. It was too unclear to say whether it was a gang or a lone nut. The days flew by in an instant. Here comes John F. Condon, a retired teacher from the Bronx who read about the case and wants to help. With the name Jaffe, he began exchanging messages with the kidnapper through the New York Journal's classified ads. A strange hide-and-seek dance. He would write, "Money is ready." When they replied in code, the stakes went up to $70,000. 0 cents at one point, and then down to $50, 0 cents. Condon was put in the middle and turned into a nightmare. Everything came to a head on April 2, 1932. Condon met a dark figure in the Bronx's St. Raymond's Cemetery. The person had a gravelly voice, a foreign accent, and their face was covered. He gave her $50,000, 0 cents in gold certificates, which are those old bills that can be tracked and are packed in a wooden box. The man pointed out a boat where the baby was said to be. Charles, who was waiting nearby, heard the conversation and made a note of the sound. It was a lie, though. "Hey, doctor. There is no boat or baby, it's just a mean joke." For weeks there was hope until May 12, when Orville Wilson, a truck driver, pulled over to go to the bathroom on a road near Mount Rose, 4 or 5 miles away from the Lindbergh home. There, half buried in leaves, was a small body with a broken head and a body that had been eaten by animals. The examiner said he had been dead since the first night, possibly since the snatch. The country lost it. There were a lot of people outside of Lindbergh's house, some praying and some just looking. The news media were full of sad stories and pictures of the empty crib, Anne's pale face, and Charles's serious look. This wasn't just a disaster, it hurt the heart of America. How could someone steal a hero's child and throw them away like trash? The ladder, the letter, and the cash were like confetti that were spread out all over the place. But how to make sense of them? That's where the real mess started. It was a mess that would last for decades. How can you follow a shadow if the trail is already going away? Let's look into the hunt that led to a name and a lot of questions. The investigation got going like a gun, but it hit more stuff than it did people. Hopewell's small-time police were way out of their league. They were stumbling around the estate, stepping on possible evidence and following reports. Early on, suspicions were focused on the people close to the Lindberghs. Violet Sharp, a British maid who is 28 years old and works for Anne's rich parents, got the meanest looks. The police took her in 3 times because she was nervous and did strange things. Before her 4th round of questions on June 10, 1932, she took cyanide at the Morrow house. In minutes, it's dead. Suicide was the answer. But her story didn't hold up in the end. That night she had a date, a terrible dead stop. There was also a hint of how messy things would get. The hostage notes kept things hot. 7 in all, shipped from Brooklyn and other places, full of interesting tidbits. One came with a tiny blue shirt for the baby, which showed they weren't lying. Following those gold certificates, worth $50,000, 0 cents, the FBI found them. They were fully in charge after President Roosevelt's push in 1933. Serial numbers were written down. They showed up at gas stops, shops, and banks all over New York. It was hard to find a needle in a haystack for 2 years. Leads ran out. Crazy people called in. Even wealthy Evelyn Walsh McLean lost $100,000, 0 cents, to a con artist named Gaston Means, who said he would find the kid. He went to jail. The case didn't change. Then there was a break on September 18, 1934. Walt Lyall, a bank worker in Manhattan, cashed a $10, 0 cents gold ticket and felt bad. He made a note of the guy's license plate. The police tracked it down to Bruno Richard Hauptmann, a 34-year-old German refugee who lives in a small Bronx apartment with his wife Anna and their child. They broke into his house on September 19th. Big win. He kept $14,000, 0 cents of the ransom money, $13.76 to be exact, in his garage. Some bills were in packages and others were hidden in wooden beams that he had cut out of nothing. The story of Hauptmann, it was from a friend who had died, Isidor Fisch, a shady fur seller who had killed himself in Germany in 1934 and left behind a shoebox full of cash. Hauptmann said he found it later and kept it. The end of the story. Fisch couldn't talk, so everyone had to take his word for it. There was a lot of proof, but it wasn't 100% sure. 8 people who were very good at handwriting looked over the ransom notes and compared them to Hauptmann's style. They showed big letters and strange spellings like any ding, and said it was the same. Arthur Kohler, a wood expert who also worked as a detective, tracked the latter's pine to a Bronx lumber yard that Hauptmann used, even matching a plank to a floorboard in Hauptmann's attic. The knots and grain are the same. He planed the rail of the ladder with a tool from his shop. That's awful, right? It is. His fingerprints did not connect him to Hopewell. No one else saw him there. It was hot money. Why keep it for 2 years, though? It's only $14,000, 0 cents out of $50, 0 cents if you're guilty. Some people didn't like it. Hauptmann was not a saint. After a time of stealing, he left Germany in 1923 and sneaked into the U.S. as a stowaway. He used to be a builder, but since the Great Depression, he hadn't had a job and was barely getting by. Not a kidnapper yet? Even though she couldn't prove it, his wife said he was home that night. The police leaned in close. The questioning went on for days, and some people say it was done with. He stuck to his story, no guilt, no frame, a man in the wrong place. The press didn't believe it. In the news it said, "Baby killer caught before he even faced a judge." The arrest was a show. News crews sat outside his apartment and took pictures of Anna crying, Hauptmann in cuffs. He was sent to New Jersey and charged with murder and extortion in New York. People were ready for blood. It was Lindbergh who saved him. This guy's their bad guy. But there were cracks. A long time later, Governor Harold G. Hoffman said it was too neat, said the murder screamed many hands. A gang, maybe someone inside. The second one was weak. It could have broken under the weight of two guys. Hauptmann didn't have a clear reason to be in Hopewell that night. Was he the bad guy or just the fall guy? The FBI kept looking, but they only found a few things. Other leads went away, like the men who were seen acting suspiciously near the house. Violet Sharp's death was still felt. Did she know something? The investigation seemed hasty and sloppy. Hauptmann was their man because of the news stories, not the facts, and they weren't going to look back once they had a suspect in jail. What took place when the lights shone? Let's go on the trial's wild ride. On January 2, 1935, Flemington, New Jersey, which had been a quiet farm town, turned into a very crazy place. The trial of Bruno Richard Hauptmann began, and it was unlike any other trial America had ever seen. 60,000 people came down, tourists, reporters, and even famous people like Jack Benny and Ginger Rogers crowded around to get a look. The short brick courtroom wasn't up to the task. 700 passes for the press were given out. There were newsreels, reports were read out loud on the radio. The streets were crowded with cars. People sold hot dogs. A bunch of kids waved "Hang Hauptmann" signs. It wasn't just hype. It was a fever dream. They called it the trial of the century. Hauptmann, a 35-year-old guy with a square head and a thick German accent, sat in the dock. He looked out of place in his cheap suit. Edward Big Ed Riley, his lawyer, was a rough guy from Brooklyn. He was loud, had a red face, and had reached his drinking peak years ago. David Whalen, who was 40 years old and is New Jersey's Attorney General, stood in front of them. He was smart and had the look of a lawyer. Big violence broke out. It wasn't just crime. It was a heart attack on America. Lindbergh, the hero, was duped. 8 men, 4 women, farmers, and shop owners made up the judges, who leaned in with wide eyes. There were a lot of big names in the prosecution's case. On January 3, Charles Lindbergh was the first person to stand. He was 6 feet tall and cold as steel. When he talked about the graveyard exchange on April 2, 1932, he said he'd never forget the rough foreign voice that said, "Hey, doctor." After 2 years, he was sure it was Hauptmann's. Anne came after, weak but strong, and talked about the empty crib. One time her voice broke. The crowd stopped talking. Her pain was real and strong. It was then the experts came in. 8 handwriting experts took apart the ransom notes and compared them to Hauptmann samples. They did this by looking for crooked letters and strange spellings like bowed for boat. The wood guy, Arthur Kohler, stole the show. They spent hours on the stand following the ladder's wood to Hauptmann's attic, figuring out through the grain patterns where the $14,000 0-cents cash was hidden in his garage. Some of the bills were still in their original wraps. It painted a picture that was dark, detailed, and bad. But it wasn't a fail. Hauptmann's prints were not found on the stairs or on Hopewell. Witnesses were weak. His voice ID was from 2 years ago. Memories can be tricky. It was fuzzy, but John Perrone, a cab driver, said he had brought Condon a note from a man who looked like Hauptmann. The defense turned around. The gaps were hammered by Riley's loud speech. Where is the solid proof? Why are there no prints? Hauptmann told the same story about the fish for 5 days in a row. The money was left over from a friend who had died. He kept it after finding it in 1934. Wayland snatched it? Why hide it in beams? Why take your time? Even though Hauptmann was shaking and sweating, he said, "I am innocent." The hearing went on for 5 weeks, with 162 witnesses testifying over 32 days. Lots of excitement all at once. It was great for the press. Every day the New York Times had front pages. Hearst papers had drawings of Hauptmann staring all over them. Outside, people chanted. Some were crying for the baby, and others were yelling for blood. Inside, the judges took it all in. Lindbergh's fame, the money, and the chance to move up. Riley looked for excuses. Anna said Bruno was home on March 1, but there were no papers to support her claim. On February 13, 1935, after thinking about it for 11 hours, they filed back. Found guilty of first-degree murder. Death is the sentence. The room blew up. Cheers and gasps. Head slouched, blank expression on face. Appeals came quickly after. In June 1935, the 18 judges on the New Jersey Court of Errors and Appeals heard the cases. Riley pushed bad proof and his own views. 13-5, they shot it down. There was a wild card. Governor Harold G. Hoffman stepped in. He was a businessman who became a politician, and he never believed Hauptmann was guilty on his own. In October 1935, they went to see him in secret to tie up loose ends. He showed that the cops had made mistakes by missing files and ignoring witnesses, and he pushed for a stay. January 1936, he told them to do more digging because it couldn't be done by just one person. The press turned over. He was called a hero by some and a meddler by others. March 27, he gave them a second chance, but the Board of Pardon said no by an 8-0 vote. March 30, the time was up. On April 3, 1936, in the New Jersey State Prison in Trenton, Hauptmann walked to the electric chair. He was pale and still, and he didn't eat or drink anything before he died. He just said a prayer. "I am innocent," he told the 52 witnesses crammed in, his voice low. At 8:44 p.m., the switch turned on and off. 2 shocks or 2,000 volts. In minutes, it's dead. This time, Lindbergh skipped it and stayed quiet. They thought the case was over. What if, though, the real story got lost? Let's look into why Hauptmann's guilt isn't as clear-cut as it first seemed. Hauptmann's death didn't hide the case. Instead, it made it more visible. The proof that sent him to the chair? When you kick it, it falls apart. Start with a stepladder. Pine found in his attic? Yes. But Kohler's study of wood wasn't magic. A lot of people in the Bronx bought logs from that store. There were hundreds of builders who could have had the same stuff. It didn't matter that the planer marks matched his tools. That night there were no blood, fibers, or prints that linked it to Hopewell. It's not a lock, but a jump. The writing is worse. 8 experts, citing Annie Ding and Bode, said it was Hauptmann's. But others, like famous actor Albert Osborne at the time, weren't sure and said it was possible instead of certain. This showed bias. They were looking for love. Then there was the money. He had $14,000, 0 cents. This was 1/3 of the bail, right? But why wait 2 years to do it? He slowly spent it, $10, 0 cents here and $20, 0 cents there, not like the person who committed the biggest crime in history. His fish stories were strange. A sketchy fur seller named Isidore leaves a shoebox full of cash, then dies in Germany. Hauptmann finds the box later. Fish was real and passed away in March 1934. But there's no proof that the handover is right. Still, if Hauptmann is guilty, why not throw away or blow up the money? The jury doesn't like problems, and this one makes no sense. It's not like the crime was done by a lone wolf. One man pulls a 15-foot ladder through, climbs a shaky rig with two pieces held together by pins, and grabs a 30-pound object, kid, and bolts. Everyone was quiet. The rung broke. It could have been done with two men's weights. One is too much. Governor Hoffman saw it and said teamwork in 1936, referring to the plans for the notes, the graveyard drop, and the body dump. The 1,930s were crowded. The time of Al Capone, rackets were everywhere. It's not crazy for a gang to steal a rich kid for money. Take the 1933 ham theft as an example. Brewery heir nabbed by professional. You can use Hauptmann as a fall guy. Takes the money and the blame, looks at a mess. His "Hey Doctor" ID was 2 years late. Voices get fuzzy and memories fade. Taxi driver John Perrone chose Hauptmann from a list, but it was dark, quick, and not safe. Others saw two guys in a car and a lone man with a ladder who seemed strange near Hopewell. None were found. The death of Violet Sharp bothers me. Sure, it's clear, but if she's clean, why would she kill herself? Septimus Banks, her fiancé, said she was scared and knew something. The police put it down and focused on Hauptmann. Pressure was crazy. The FBI, the press, and the people all wanted to win. A scapegoat made a neat knot in it. There are a lot of questions in books. In his 1987 book, The Lindbergh Case, Jim Fisher rips apart the proof, calling it weak and hasty. Richard Cahill's Hey Hey, the 2014 movie Hauptmann's Ladder, goes deeper. The ladder is too high. Cash alone doesn't prove murder. Some people could smell a rat even back then. The New York Daily News wrote parts that questioned how fast the trial was going. The probe by Hoffman found holes. Millard Whited saw a man near Hopewell but was not listened to until it was too late. The police lost their logs. Was it a frame? There isn't any solid proof, just enough smoke to make you wonder. The confusion of the investigation didn't help. Early leads, like a German sound on a phone tip, didn't work out. The FBI looked for 250,000 names and interviewed 20 people, but once they found Hauptmann, they sealed the case. Other possibilities, like ties to the mob or unhappy employees, were pushed to the side. It was messed up by Lindbergh's fame. Cops had to get a face quickly. The immigrant ex-con and poor Hauptmann was the right bad guy for America in 1935. Fit isn't truth, though. Even his trial makes me question him. Threats of violence were made against the jurors. One person got a brick through her window. From the start, the press made him look guilty. What do you think? Time called him the German beast. Not really. Riley messed it up because she was drunk and not ready at all. The words "I'm innocent" from Hauptmann didn't ring true in that light. What if it's true, though? There was no DNA or cameras, just a story that doesn't make sense. Who else could be the bad guy if Hauptmann isn't it? Let's look at the last name you might think is wrong. Things are getting crazy now. Could it be that Charles Lindbergh wasn't the sad dad, but the stage master? It sounds crazy that America's hero, the flyboy who crossed the Atlantic, planned the kidnapping of his own son. But some people say it's not so crazy after all. It floats on Lloyd Gardner's 2004 book, The Case That Never Dies, and it stays put like glue. Lindbergh was more than just a pilot. Socialism, genetics, and the idea of survival of the fittest were big ideas for him. He respected speed and perfection, and he even wrote about how to make people better. Charles Jr., his son, wasn't like that. Lindbergh was born with rickets and a big head. Did that affect how she saw the world? The idea is not good. He may have arranged it or let it happen to hide a flaw. That's all there is to it, a bunch of dots that don't quite fit together. Begin with the night it happened. Lindbergh had come home. Strange for a guy who always flies away. Most of the time talks were held in Detroit on Tuesday nights. It was cold outside in March, and the nursery window had its blinds open. Why? After 7:30 p.m., he told Anne and Betty Gow not to check on the baby further. Taking a break? might be suspicious. After that, he took over the case, hid from the FBI for days, ran his own show, and picked leads like a general. Condon's part as Jaffe, Lindbergh agreed with it and was in charge of it. The way he acts is a red flag. He stayed cool at the cemetery drop and didn't move when he heard, "Hey, doctor." As soon as the body was found, he knew it was the right one and said, "That's him," and left and broke down. He wasn't. Test time. He was cold, held his ground during the testimony, and stared down at Hauptmann like a rock. Not sadness, but something colder. In the end, he pushed for burning. The body burned quickly. One examination is enough. No more evidence. Chance or cleaning up. Lindbergh's quirks make it more interesting. He liked pulling jokes on people. "I hit a friend's car in a barn just for fun. But this, hey, dollar." He liked Hitler's order and flirted with eugenics in the 1940s, which shows that he was someone who broke the rules for the sake of his beliefs. Charles Jr.'s health bothered him. Doctors noticed that the boy had rickets and weak bones, which Lindbergh might have seen as signs of weakness. It's not written in letters, but his control shows that he meant to do it. Why do you want to stop the FBI? Why make the body burn? It's just a shadow and not proof. Some people laugh. Why take a chance on his fame? He made up a story about Lindbergh as being fearless and perfect. He might have been damaged by a fake kidnapping that went wrong, but it's possible that he didn't fire the gun. Let it go. He might have told someone. There was a ladder inside the wall of the house, easy for a tipper to get to. A worker, a friend, or a servant. Several ideas point to Violet Sharp. Her killing herself is too easy. Or even Betty Gao, who is good. There is no proof, only rumors. It was written by someone at Rutgers University. Was it an inside job? And it stays. His life after backs up the vibe. To avoid fame after his trial, Lindbergh went to Europe and lived a quiet life. Feeling guilty or just worn out? He later had 7 children in secret with 3 women in Germany, which showed he was willing to break the rules. Could he bend them this way? It's not true. Grief, not a plot, is what most people say drove him. The idea of an inside job won't go away, though. There are too many strange moves, way too much power. Historians disagree. It makes sense to Gardner, who says Lindbergh's ego fits. Some people like Jim Fisher say it's not true. Too far? No proof? The people then ate it. In the 1930s, newspapers gave the impression that Lindbergh knew more. Now, books like Gregory Algren's Crime of the Century, 1993, push it. There is no DNA and no statement. There is only a twisty idea.